The midnight sky erupted with fire as Vega's ship tore through Earth's atmosphere, trailing sparks across the Wyoming wilderness. Her navigation systems had failed 3 sectors back, and now she was plummeting toward an uncharted blue planet, her sleek silver vessel spinning out of control. She gripped the control panel, her iridescent skin shifting from azure to a stressed crimson as she fought to stabilize the descent. "Engage emergency landing protocol," she commanded, her accent lilting with the musical tones of her home world, Astrea. The ship responded with a series of beeps before deploying atmospheric brakes, slowing her descent just enough to prevent a catastrophic impact. When the dust settled, Vega found herself in a field of tall grass, her ship half buried in soil rich with the scent of life. Unlike the synthetic atmospheres of her space-faring society, this air was wild, untamed, much like the stories of her ancestors who had once been nomadic herders on the plains of Astrea before technology changed their way of life. Colton Blackwood woke to the sound of thunder that wasn't thunder. Through his bedroom window, he saw the streak of light cutting across the pre-dawn sky and crash landing somewhere on the north pasture. Most folks would have called the authorities, but Colton had learned long ago that this part of Wyoming was better served by self-reliance than government intervention. He pulled on his worn leather boots, grabbed his rifle more out of habit than intent, and headed out on his horse, Maverick. The ranch had been in the Blackwood family for 4 generations, but recent droughts and rising costs had pushed it to the brink of bankruptcy. Whatever had fallen from the sky was on his land, and that made it his business. The sun was just beginning to paint the horizon when Colton found the crash site. What he saw made him pull Maverick to an abrupt halt. It wasn't a meteor or a satellite. It was clearly a craft of some kind, sleek and otherworldly. And more surprisingly, someone, or something, was emerging from it. Vega stepped out, her legs unsteady on the unfamiliar gravity. Her form was humanoid but undeniably alien, tall and graceful with skin that shimmered with subtle patterns of light, changing hue with her emotions. Currently it pulsed with cautious amber tones. Her hair, if it could be called that, was a mass of fine tendrils that moved slightly on their own, sensing the environment. She wore what appeared to be a form-fitting suit made of material that resembled polished leather but moved like liquid. Their eyes met across the field, hers large and luminous with vertical pupils, his a startled blue beneath the brim of his Stetson. Colton's hand tightened on his rifle, but he didn't raise it. There was something in the creature's posture that spoke of vulnerability rather than threat, and in his 35 years of life, he'd learned to trust his instincts. "Well," he said, his voice rough from disuse, "you're either the strangest mirage I've ever seen or I need to reconsider my views on life in the universe." To his astonishment, she responded in English, her voice carrying an accent he couldn't place. "I am Vega, scout ranger from the Astrian fleet. My ship has been damaged. I mean no harm." "Colton Blackwood," he replied, tipping his hat in a gesture as automatic as breathing. "Welcome to Earth, more specifically, the Blackwood Ranch in Wyoming." Vega took a step forward, then stumbled as her systems struggled to adapt to Earth's gravity. Colton moved without thinking, dismounting and catching her before she fell. The touch sent an electric current through both of them. Her skin was warm and hummed with a subtle energy that made the hair on his arms stand up. "Thank you," she said, her skin flushing a deep rose color that Colton would later learn signified embarrassment. "My equilibrium calibrators need time to adjust." "Don't know what those are, but you're welcome to rest at the ranch house while you figure it out. Can't leave you out here. Night gets cold and the coyotes get curious." As they made their way back to the ranch house, Vega riding behind him on Maverick, her arms tentatively around his waist, Colton couldn't help but wonder what kind of trouble he was inviting into his life. But something about her fascinated him. Perhaps it was the way she looked at his world with such wonder. Or maybe it was simply that, for the first time in years, something unexpected had happened on the Blackwood Ranch. Neither of them knew it yet, but as the sun rose fully over the Wyoming plains, their stars had aligned in ways that would change both their worlds forever. Morning sunlight streamed through the guest room window, rousing Vega from her first sleep on Earth. She'd spent the night in Colton's spare bedroom, surrounded by faded quilts and the unfamiliar scent of cedar. Her skin rippled with soft blue waves as she oriented herself, recalling the events that had stranded her on this frontier planet. Downstairs, Colton was frying eggs, the sharp sizzle drawing Vega toward the kitchen. She moved with increasing confidence, her body adapting to Earth's gravity. Morning, Colton said, glancing up. His breath caught momentarily. In daylight, Vega's otherworldly beauty was even more apparent. Her skin shimmered with turquoise patterns that seemed to follow her pulse, and her tendril-like hair floated gently around her face, responding to unseen currents. Hope you can eat Earth food. It's nothing fancy. My species is adaptable, Vega replied, studying the simple meal with fascination. On Astria, I was a scout ranger, trained to survive in diverse environments. Their fingers brushed as Colton handed her a plate, sending an unexpected warmth up his arm. Vega's skin flushed a deeper blue in response, the color spreading across her cheeks. Over breakfast, Vega explained more about her mission. She was part of an exploration team studying developing civilizations across the galaxy. Her ship would need significant repairs before she could communicate with her fleet. Until then, Colton said, you're welcome to stay, but around here everybody works. His eyes held a challenge that Vega found strangely thrilling. Show me, she said simply. Outside, the ranch sprawled before them, a modest operation with a small herd of cattle, several horses, and fields that needed attention. Colton's family had once employed ranch hands, but financial struggles had left him managing alone. Vega approached the corral where several horses eyed her cautiously. To Colton's surprise, she extended her hand, and the most temperamental mare, when even he approached with caution, stepped forward, nuzzling her palm. On my world, we had similar creatures, Vega explained, her tone nostalgic. Before technology changed our society, my ancestors were nomadic herders. I studied traditional ways as part of my cultural education. Colton handed her a worn leather saddle. Let's see what you've got, then. The day unfolded in a rhythm of work, mending fences, checking on cattle, inspecting irrigation systems. Vega proved a quick study, her alien strength and agility making her a natural. By afternoon, she rode alongside Colton as if she'd been born to it, her posture mirroring his as they guided their horses across a stream. You're full of surprises, Colton admitted as they paused on a ridge overlooking the property. Sweat glistened on his tanned forearms, his shirt clinging to his broad shoulders. Most days I'm out here alone with my thoughts. And what thoughts occupy a human cowboy? Vega asked, her luminous eyes studying him with genuine curiosity. Colton's gaze swept across his land. Lately, mostly worry, drought's been hard, banks are circling, this place is everything to me but keeping it's getting harder each year. Vega nodded, understanding the universal language of connection to land and legacy. Perhaps I can help while I'm here. My people have developed agricultural techniques for harsh environments. As the sun began its descent, dark clouds gathered on the horizon. They were halfway back to the ranch house when the storm hit, sheets of rain driven by powerful winds. Colton pointed to a structure in the distance. Old line cabin, we can wait it out there. They urged their horses forward, reaching the small wooden cabin just as lightning cracked across the sky. Inside, the one-room shelter was spare but dry, with a small fireplace, a table, and a narrow bed. Colton busied himself starting a fire while Vega stood by the window, watching the storm with evident delight. Her skin pulsed with flashes of silver that matched the lightning outside, her entire being seeming to resonate with the planet's energy. You're glowing, Colton observed, his voice lower than before. Vega turned to find him watching her, the firelight casting shadows across his features. My species responds to energy and emotion, she explained. This storm, it's beautiful, raw, untamed. Like you, Colton said simply. The space between them seemed to charge with the same electricity that filled the sky outside. Vega moved toward him, curious about the heat building within her, a response her training hadn't prepared her for. I find myself experiencing unexpected reactions to your presence, she admitted, stopping just before him. Is this what humans call attraction? Colton's laugh was soft, warm, something like that. His hand rose tentatively to touch one of her luminous tendrils, watching as it curled gently around his finger. I've never met anyone like you. Nor I you, she whispered. Their first kiss was tentative, a meeting of worlds. His lips were warm against hers, and Vega's skin rippled with waves of deep crimson as new sensations cascaded through her. When Colton pulled back slightly, his eyes questioning, she answered by drawing him closer. Outside, the storm raged on, but within the cabin, a different kind of tempest was brewing. one that neither alien nor human had anticipated when the day began. As clothing was shed and boundaries dissolved, Vega discovered that some experiences transcended species, and some connections required no translation. The narrow bed caught their intertwined forms as exploration gave way to passion, their bodies learning each other's mysteries in the language of touch and breath. Vega's skin illuminated the cabin with pulses of deep ruby and gold as pleasure built and crested, her tendrils entwining with Colton's hair as they moved together in ancient rhythm. Later, as they lay wrapped in worn blankets, the storm subsiding outside, Colton traced the patterns that still shimmered across Vega's shoulder. "Still think I'm not trouble?" she asked, a smile in her voice. Colton's answering grin held no regret. "Darlin', some trouble is worth every moment." Neither spoke of tomorrow, of repairs or fleets or banks. For now, the old line cabin held their new world, one where stars crossed and boundaries blurred between what was earthly and what was alien, but what felt undeniably right. 2 weeks had passed since the storm that had changed everything between Colton and Vega. The ranch had fallen into a new rhythm, mornings spent working side by side, evenings devoted to each other. Vega's skin often glowed with contentment, shifting between gentle lavenders and warm golds whenever Colton was near. Today, however, her color had settled into an anxious jade as they rode fence lines on the north pasture. She'd been working on her ship's communications array, and something in the night sky had troubled her. "You've been quiet all morning," Colton observed, guiding his horse alongside hers. The summer sun burnished his already tanned skin, and weeks of better sleep had eased the worry lines around his eyes. "Ship troubles." Vega nodded, her luminous eyes scanning the horizon. "I detected unfamiliar signals last night, not from my people but from somewhere closer." She hesitated. "Someone was scanning your land, Colton, with technology that shouldn't exist on Earth yet." Before Colton could respond, the distant sound of engines drew their attention. A caravan of black SUVs approached along the main road, kicking up dust as they turned onto the ranch's long driveway. "Frontier Development Corporation," Colton muttered, recognizing the logo emblazoned on the vehicles. "They've been buying up ranches all through the county. Made me an offer last month that I turned down flat." Vega's tendrils stirred with agitation. "There's something wrong about their energy signature. It doesn't feel entirely human." They rode back to the ranch house at a canter, arriving just as the vehicles pulled up. Maxwell Reed stepped out of the lead SUV, his expensive suit incongruous against the dusty backdrop. 2 men in dark glasses flanked him, their posture rigid and watchful. "Mr. Blackwood," Reed called with a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I see you've acquired help since we last spoke." His gaze lingered on Vega, too calculating to be merely curious. Colton positioned himself slightly in front of Vega. "Mr. Reed, still not interested in selling." "Perhaps you'll reconsider when you see our new offer." Reed extended a folder. "The drought isn't ending anytime soon, Blackwood. The bank tells me you've missed 2 mortgage payments." Colton's jaw tightened. He hadn't shared the full extent of his financial troubles with Vega. Reed continued, "We're particularly interested in the northern section of your property. Our surveys indicate unique mineral deposits." "Near my crash site," Vega whispered, for Colton's ears only. Her skin had darkened to a deep emerald, a color Colton had come to recognize as warning. "The property's not for sale. Not now, not ever," Colton stated firmly. Reed's smile thinned. "Evolution is inevitable, Mr. Blackwood. Those who resist get left behind." He glanced again at Vega. "Interesting companion you have. I'd be curious to know more about her." Background. As Reed and his men departed, Vega and Colton exchanged troubled looks. Inside the ranch house, Vega paced while Colton reviewed the paperwork Reed had left behind. "They've tripled their offer," he said, running a hand through his hair. "And they're not wrong about the mortgage. Been juggling bills for months now." Vega's expression softened. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Pride, I guess. Been handling my own problems for a long time." He looked up at her. "But Reed's interest in the north section can't be coincidence. I think they know something's up there besides your ship." "The crash may have revealed trace elements from my drive system," Vega explained. "On your planet, they would appear as rare minerals, extremely valuable and potentially dangerous in the wrong hands." That evening, after checking that no unwelcome visitors remained on the property, they retreated to Colton's bedroom. Their lovemaking held a new urgency, Vega's skin pulsing with deep crimson waves as Colton's touch grew more possessive, more desperate. "I won't let them take this place," he promised against her neck, his hands mapping the contours of her otherworldly form as if committing her to memory. Vega arched beneath him, her tendril-like hair weaving patterns across his skin. "My people have technology that could help," she whispered between kisses. "Ways to regenerate soil, conserve water." Their bodies moved together with increasing intensity, the boundaries between alien and human dissolving in shared pleasure. Vega's skin illuminated the darkened room as she cried out, her glow washing over them both in waves of gold and ruby. Later, as they lay tangled in sheets, Colton traced the patterns still shimmer across her abdomen. "Using your technology, wouldn't that violate some kind of space rule, non-interference or something?" Vega smiled, her tendrils gently caressing his face. "My mission is to study developing civilizations, yes, but there are exceptions for sustainable practices." Her expression grew more serious. "The real question is what Reed and his corporation are after. The signals I detected were not entirely of Earth origin." The following days brought a flurry of activity. While Colton tended to the ranch's immediate needs, Vega applied her knowledge to its infrastructure. She modified the irrigation system to recycle water more efficiently and introduced mineral compounds from her ship's stores that revitalized sections of drought-stricken soil. Within a week, parts of the ranch showed remarkable improvement. Fields that had been brown were showing new growth, and the cattle had more abundant grazing land. But their success brought unwanted attention. Drones began appearing over the property, and unfamiliar vehicles were spotted on the county road. "They're watching us," Colton noted one evening as they sat on the porch, a bottle of whiskey between them. "Question is, what are they waiting for?" Vega's skin rippled with uneasy blue. "I've been thinking about what happens when my people come for me," she admitted quietly. "I was due to return after 6 lunar cycles. It's been almost 2. Colton's hand tightened around his glass. They'd never discussed the temporary nature of her stay. It had been easier to live in the moment, to pretend that their worlds weren't separated by light years and impossible differences. "Would you go?" he asked, not looking at her. "If they came tomorrow, would you leave?" Vega moved to kneel before him, taking his weathered hands in her luminous ones. "2 weeks ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. My duty, my life, they were clear to me." Her skin pulsed with waves of deep rose. "Now I'm not certain of anything except how I feel when I'm with you." Colton pulled her into his lap, his kiss tasting of whiskey and need. "We'll figure it out," he promised against her lips. "Together." As the sunset painted the Wyoming sky in colors that rivaled Vega's shifting skin, neither noticed the small drone hovering at the edge of the property, its camera capturing every detail of their embrace, or the satellite dish on a distant hillside, beaming signals not to Earth-based receivers, but somewhere much further away. The harvest moon hung low over Blackwood Ranch, casting long shadows across the property that had transformed over the past month. With Vega's knowledge and Colton's dedication, patches of green now defied the persistent drought, and the cattle were healthier than they'd been in years. Vega stood beside her partially repaired ship, her skin shifting between troubled amber and melancholic blue. The communications array she'd been repairing had finally connected with her fleet, and the message she'd received left her at a crossroads she'd never anticipated facing. "They're coming," she whispered as Colton approached, his boots crunching on the dry grass. 3 days from now." Colton's face remained carefully neutral, but Vega could see the muscle tightening in his jaw. They'd spoken little about her inevitable departure, choosing instead to live in a bubble of present moments, passionate nights and hardworking days that had created a bond neither had anticipated. "I see," he said simply, his hands finding their familiar places in his pockets. "Guess you'll be heading home then." Vega's tendrils rippled with agitation. "I don't know what I'm going to do, Colton. My duty, my people. They expect me to return with my findings and continue my mission elsewhere." "And what do you want?" His blue eyes fixed on hers, searching for answers they both feared. Before she could respond, the distant sound of vehicles interrupted them. Through binoculars, they spotted 3 black SUVs parked at the edge of the property, men in tactical gear unloading equipment. "Reed's not waiting any longer," Colton muttered. "Come on, we need to get back to the house." They rode hard, taking a back trail through a ravine. As they approached the ranch house, Colton's satellite phone buzzed. His contact at the county sheriff's office warning that Frontier Development had filed for an emergency excavation permit, claiming critical mineral resources vital to national security. "They've got government connections," Colton explained grimly as they entered the house, "and enough money to make problems disappear." That night, they formulated a plan. While Vega used her technology to mask her ship's energy signature, Colton called in favors from neighboring ranchers who'd also resisted Frontier's pressure tactics. By morning, they had a small but determined alliance. As dusk approached the following day, Vega found Colton on the porch, staring at the family photographs he'd gathered from around the house. "4 generations," he said without looking up. "My great-grandfather claimed this land when nothing was here but wild grass and wilder dreams." He finally met her gaze. "I always thought I'd pass it on someday, add another generation to the wall." Vega's skin flushed a deep rose as she sat beside him, her tendrils gently reaching to caress his weathered face. "On my world, we have a concept, soul strings, connections that transcend physical boundaries. They're rare and considered sacred." Her luminous eyes held his. "What I feel for you." It wasn't in any mission protocol. Colton's calloused hand covered hers. "Come with me," he said suddenly, rising and pulling her up. "There's something I want to show you." They rode out as night fell, climbing to a mesa that overlooked the entire valley. The stars emerged in brilliant clarity, the Milky Way arching overhead in a spectacular display that reminded Vega of the view from her ship's observation deck. Colton spread a blanket on the ground. "My dad used to bring me up here when I was a kid. Told me to remember that no matter how big our problems seemed, the sky was always bigger." Vega's skin rippled with emotion as she settled beside him. "It's beautiful. The patterns are different from what I see on Astrea, but the feeling, that vastness, it's the same." "Maybe that's true of a lot of things," Colton suggested, his voice lower. "Different worlds, but the same feelings." Their kiss began gently, a tentative exploration that quickly blazed into something more urgent. Under the watching stars, Vega's skin illuminated their embrace with waves of deep crimson and gold as clothing was set aside and boundaries dissolved. Colton's touch was reverent as he explored her luminous form, each caress drawing patterns of light across her skin. Vega's tendrils wrapped around his shoulders, pulling him closer as their bodies joined in a rhythm as ancient as the stars above them. "Stay with me," Colton whispered against her neck, his movements becoming more intense. "Whatever happens tomorrow, tonight you're mine." Vega arched beneath him, her skin pulsing brighter with each wave of pleasure. "And you are mine," she gasped, her alien biology responding to him in ways that transcended species, creating sensations that left them both breathless. At the height of their passion, Vega's glow intensified until they were bathed in light, the boundaries between their bodies seeming to dissolve as they moved together. When release finally came, it crashed through them simultaneously, Vega crying out in her native tongue as Colton held her through waves of pleasure that seemed to connect them to the very stars overhead. Afterward, they lay tangled together beneath a thermal blanket, watching shooting stars trace paths across the heavens. "One of those might be your people," Colton observed, his fingers tracing lazy patterns across her still glowing skin. "Or yours," Vega countered. "Your species is reaching for the stars now too. It's why we study developing civilizations, to understand the journey." Colton propped himself up on one elbow, his expression serious. "What happens if you stay, Vega? Would they come after you?" Her tendrils stirred with uncertainty. "It's unprecedented. Scout Rangers don't defect." The word felt strange on her tongue. "But there are protocols for long-term observation missions, ambassadorships to developing worlds." Hope flickered in Colton's eyes. "So it's possible." "Complicated but possible," she admitted. "I would need to convince my commander that there's scientific value in prolonged immersion." Her hand caressed his cheek. "Though my reasons go far beyond science now." As dawn approached, they reluctantly prepared to return to the ranch. The day ahead would bring confrontation with Frontier Development, and beyond that, the arrival of Vega's fleet, crossroads upon crossroads. They were halfway down the mesa when Vega suddenly pulled her horse to a stop, her skin shifting to alarmed crimson. "Something's wrong," she said, her tendrils stretching forward, sensing. "Energy signatures at the ranch house, weapons." They circled wide, approaching through the tree line at the property's edge. Through binoculars, they could see men in tactical gear surrounding the ranch house, while others had established a perimeter around Vega's ship. Maxwell Reed stood by the main SUV, speaking into a satellite phone. "They're after your technology," Colton whispered, "and they're willing to go through me to get it." Vega's eyes narrowed, her skin darkening to a determined indigo. "Then they'll have to go through both of us." She touched the small device at her wrist. "And tomorrow they'll have to explain themselves to my fleet." As the sun rose over Blackwood Ranch, illuminating the standoff below, Vega and Colton exchanged a look that needed no translation across species or worlds. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Dawn broke over a tense standoff at Blackwood Ranch. Vega and Colton maintained their hidden position in the tree line, observing Maxwell Reed's men as they surrounded both the ranch house and Vega's ship. Through Colton's binoculars, they could see sophisticated scanning equipment being assembled near the crash site. "They're looking for the drive components," Vega whispered, her skin a determined slate blue. "If they access that technology before they understand the containment protocols." "Boom," Colton asked grimly. "More like a localized disruption of your planet's electromagnetic field," she corrected. "But yes, essentially boom." Colton's jaw tightened. "The neighbors I called should be gathering at the Miller place by now. We've got about 15 ranchers ready to back our play." He glanced at the sky. "How long until your people arrive?" "The lead ship will enter orbit this evening," Vega said, checking the small device on her wrist. "Commander Orion will likely make contact before any landing." As if on cue, Reed's satellite phone rang. His expression shifted from smug confidence to confusion, then alarm as he listened to the caller. He barked orders to his men, who began moving with greater urgency. "Someone tipped him off," Colton muttered. "He knows something's coming." Vega's tendrils stirred with determination. Time to change the plan. Instead of retreating to join the neighboring ranchers, they circled to the old storage barn where Colton kept his father's vintage motorcycle. While Colton prepared the bike, Vega modified a small device from her emergency kit. "This will temporarily disrupt their communications and weapons systems," she explained. "It won't last long, but it should create enough confusion for us to reach my ship." They roared out of the barn on the motorcycle, Vega's skin blazing with battle-ready crimson as she activated her device. Across the property, Reed's men stumbled as their earpieces emitted painful feedback, and their weapons systems went offline. Colton gunned the engine, driving straight through the disoriented security perimeter. They skidded to a stop beside Vega's ship, where she quickly placed her palm against the hull. The vessel hummed to life, access panels sliding open. "Backup power reserves," she explained as they entered. "Not enough to fly, but enough for defense and communication." Inside, the ship systems responded to Vega's touch, holographic displays flickering to life. She worked quickly, securing the most sensitive technology and establishing a direct link to her approaching fleet. Outside, Reed's men had regrouped and surrounded the ship. Reed himself approached, his expression thunderous. "You don't understand what you're interfering with, Blackwood," he shouted. "This goes beyond your little ranch. We're talking about national security, planetary security." "Funny," Colton called back from the ship's entrance. "I don't remember electing you to protect the planet." Reed's face contorted. "We've detected the approaching vessels. Do you really think we'll let aliens walk in and take over? We need her technology to defend ourselves." Vega emerged beside Colton, her skin poolsing with indignation. "My people have been studying your world for generations. If conquest was our intention, it would have happened long before your species discovered electricity." The standoff intensified as Reed's men raised their weapons, now functioning again. Colton tensed, positioning himself slightly in front of Vega, but she gently moved him aside. "Your courage is admirable," she murmured, "but unnecessary." She raised her hands toward the sky, her skin brightening to an almost blinding intensity. Above them, the air shimmered and distorted, revealing the outline of a massive vessel that had been present but cloaked. "My commander anticipated complications," Vega explained, a small smile playing at her lips. "Orion is rather protective of her scout rangers." A beam of light shot down from the cloaked ship, materializing into a tall, imposing figure with skin that shimmered with patterns like Vega's. but in deeper, more authoritative blues. Commander Orion surveyed the scene with luminous eyes that missed nothing. "Scout Ranger Vega," she acknowledged formally before turning a cold gaze on Reed and his men. "These humans are interfering with a sanctioned observation mission and attempting to access restricted technology. Explain." The next hours passed in a blur of diplomacy and confrontation. Orion's presence, and the revelation of 3 more cloaked ships in Earth's orbit, quickly shifted the power dynamic. Government officials arrived, disavowing any connection to Reed's operation. It became clear that frontier development had been a front for a private military contractor seeking alien technology. As dusk fell, Colton's rancher friends arrived en masse, forming a protective circle around the property while official negotiations continued in the ranch house. Vega found moments to speak privately with Orion, their animated conversation punctuated by gestures toward Colton and the ranch. Finally, close to midnight, agreements were reached. Reed and his core team were taken into custody by federal agents. The ranchers celebrated with impromptu bonfires at the property's edge, keeping respectful distance from the alien visitors now moving openly between ships and ground. Colton found Vega standing alone by the corral, her skin shifting through thoughtful patterns of blue and purple as she watched the stars. "So," he said quietly, coming to stand beside her, "what's the verdict?" Vega turned to him, her tendrils reaching gently for his face in the gesture that had become so familiar. "I've been granted status as permanent cultural attaché to Earth," she said, her skin warming to rose-gold happiness. "The first of my kind to receive such an assignment." Hope bloomed in Colton's chest. Meaning I stay," she whispered, moving closer. "My mission is now to deepen understanding between our worlds through immersive cultural exchange." Colton's laugh was part relief, part joy as he pulled her into his arms. "Is that what we're calling it?" Their kiss deepened under the stars, Vega's skin illuminating them both with waves of crimson and gold. When they finally separated, Colton rested his forehead against hers. "Your commander approved this because of scientific interest in Earth, I'm guessing." Vega's tendrils curled mischievously. "Partially, but Orion has studied humans longer than anyone. She understands about soul strings." Her eyes met his. "When connections like ours form, my people consider it sacred. To sever such a bond would be considered a greater violation than bending protocol." "Smart people, your folks," Colton murmured. 2 days later, as the last of Vega's fleet prepared to depart, a smaller ceremony took place on the mesa where they had shared their most intimate night. Commander Orion presided, her formal uniform glittering with insignia as she spoke words in the musical Astrian language, binding Vega and Colton in what she translated as a cross-stellar union. Neighboring ranchers stood witness alongside Astrian crew members, an unlikely gathering united by respect for the couple at its center. Vega wore a dress of flowing material that shifted colors with her emotions, currently a joyful gold that matched the setting sun. Colton had reluctantly traded his worn jeans for dress pants, though he'd insisted on keeping his favorite boots. "In recognition of this unprecedented union," Orion announced, "the Astrian Council has approved technological assistance for sustainable agriculture in this region to be implemented under Attaché Vega's supervision." Her stern features softened slightly. "Consider it a wedding gift." Later, as celebration continued at the ranch house, Astrian beverages mixing with Wyoming whiskey and what would become legendary local tailies, Vega and Colton slipped away to the porch swing. "You know," Colton said, his arm around her glowing shoulders, "when I saw that streak of light cross the sky, I thought it might be the end of everything." Vega's tendrils caressed his face as her luminous eyes met his. Instead, it was just the beginning. Above them, the Wyoming stars shone down on Blackwood Ranch, as they had for generations. But now they seemed closer somehow, more connected to the lives unfolding beneath them. A cosmic rodeo where an alien cowgirl had found her human cowboy, and together they'd lassoed a future neither could have imagined alone. As Vega's skin pulsed with waves of deep rose and gold, Colton pulled her closer. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, explaining his alien wife to government officials, implementing Astrian technology on Earth soil, perhaps even eventually introducing new forms of life to the Blackwood family tree. But tonight, under the vast Wyoming sky that now connected 2 worlds instead of separating them, they were simply home.